It is our pleasure to be joined by a man that covers the Oklahoma City Thunder as well as anyone. You can catch him on the Down to Dunk podcast. You can also catch him on the Athletic NBA show. He is the one, the only Andrew Schlecht. What's going on, man? How we doing?
Well, it's draft week, guys. So this is one of my favorite weeks of the year. We get to talk about guys that may or may not matter just in detail. Like we know everything about them, but the truth is we know very little, but it's very exciting.
And it's smokescreen season for the Thunder. Now,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Hey, before we talk about the draft and what the Thunder may do in the draft, just how different of an experience was it for you this season, right? As opposed to the two seasons previous to that one, because you're doing a podcast about every single game. It had to be much more enjoyable, I assume.
Yeah, especially when we're in March and April and we're talking about games that matter leading up to possibly making the play-in. That was great. In the years past, it was like, man, we're talking about the draft and it's March and we're trying to sift through that now. It's like, man, like we've got a long way to get there because we're watching meaningless basketball. Oh man, Trey Mann had a great end of the season. It didn't mean anything. End of the year basketball with a team that's bad, you can just take it and just throw it all in the dumpster. None of it matters. So it was great. It was a breath of fresh air watching this team and knowing that it's their young guys that got them to where they needed to go. It's Shea, it's Giddey, it's Jalen Williams. It's those guys that got them to the play-in. It was very fun, and not just like some vets that stopped by to kind of help them along. No, this is the team. And so when they're ready, the Thunder have shown like they're not trying to hold these guys back when they show that they're ready to do something. And they did that this year. So that was cool.
Which makes it interesting, you go back to whenever the Thunder were really in their heyday, in their prime, the draft really wasn't anything that anyone was too concerned about, right? Okay, maybe they add a piece. So it's got to be cool to kind of, as you put a lot of time in preparing for these things and then talking about what actually happened, to watch those guys develop over the course of a couple years. And I guess it makes this time of the year a little more, you're able to handle it a little bit better, I guess.
Yeah, especially a guy like Josh Giddey, who the way he performed against the Pelicans in that game, and he's 20 years old. he's 20 years old and putting up stats that are pretty unheard of for a 20-year-old, like 16, 8, and 6 at 20 years old and stepping up in a playing game like he did. That's pretty rare. I think even Thunder fans underrate him a little bit. I think a lot of people want to talk about Shea. They want to talk about J-Dub because those are players that we've seen before and we know what to do with those kind of players. But when you have this 6'8" player, he's not really a shooter. He's not really a natural scorer, but he can score. But he's just a brilliant passer and a great rebounder and just shows crazy aggression. The fact that there's not a great comp for him, I think people are like, okay, we'll put him to the side until he's actually shows us he's an all-star. Everybody else we can think about a little bit easier, but because of that, I think he gets a little underrated.
Did you expect Shea to make the type of jump he did last season?
No, I think it'd be foolish to think that somebody like that, you'd be just a ridiculous homer if you thought, well, clearly this guy's going to be first team all NBA, over 30 points per game. That didn't happen to many guys. And for him to consistently just come in and score, being double teamed every night, defenses are throwing everything at him, and he just finds a way. He's a special player, and he wants to get better. When you talk to him about his season, he doesn't talk about like, man, look at all I accomplished. Look what I did. He's like, man, I've got to go get better. Like, I got to get better defensively. I've got to get better with my 3-point shot. I mean, there's still room for this guy to grow. He's gotten better every single year. If you go back to his high school career, even he continues to make these jumps that people weren't ready for. He wasn't really supposed to be someone who was going to go start and play for a D1 school. And then he did that. He wasn't supposed to be a lottery pick. He became that. He wasn't supposed to be somebody that could handle the full load as like a point guard on a team. He did that in OKC. He wasn't supposed to be a guy that could be first team all NBA. Here he is. I mean, it's every single year. The dude just continues to just exceed expectations, and it's work ethic. He's weirdly humble for a guy that's doing what he's doing. He's very team oriented. He's just like the dream for Sam Presti and the Thunder, with just everything that he brings to the table. He's constantly positive. Like, just he's the leader of the team, and they are just so excited they got this guy because of all of those reasons.
Yeah, and just in thinking about that and this draft, what do you think, like, looking forward, and the West is changing, what if you take a snapshot from maybe 3 or 4 years ago compared to what it is now, it's a totally different landscape. And Thunder had, I think, as we talked about, a little bit better than most people expected season. With this, is this draft that important? Like, if they add the right piece or couple of pieces that could end up really being the difference, and this is a team that can, legitimately compete?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there are definitely pieces in here that can complete the team. But I just wonder where the Thunder's head is at. If they're still looking, hey, do we have the 12th pick, or we have the opportunity to trade to 9, or we have the opportunity to trade to 7. Let's swing for the fences. Because if we connect on what could be one of the best players in this draft, we could be right back where we were in 2010. Or you could go for a guy that maybe is just, he fits what we need, and maybe he doesn't have the highest ceiling. They're going to have the opportunity for both, whether they stay at 12 or they trade up. They're going to find somebody that's going to make an impact. I think there's probably 16 or 17 guys in this draft that could make a pretty big impact on the team. And the Thunder, I kind of trust them to make the right decision there. But there are also guys in here where they could swing and absolutely whiff because that guy is just not ready to contribute to a team. And that's what's going to be hard with this team moving forward, is if you go for a big project, are the minutes there? Because if this guy's not ready to play, where is he going to earn the minutes? And so that to me will be really interesting, because if they draft Bilal Coulibaly, who played small forward for Metropolitans 92, if they draft him, he's 18 years old, crazy long arms, 6'7", but is he ready to play in the NBA? Probably not. He's probably going to be on the blue with Ousmane Dieng, and they'll develop him that way and see if he can make it. Maybe he can get on the court just because he has good defensive chops, but he's a project. And so can they take on another project within this, I think is a question. And I know Coach Degnault would want it because Degnault loves development. But I also wonder if, like, the Shea, Giddey, J-Dub trio with Chet plugged in, like, are those guys going to love to play with projects moving forward? Because those dudes are going to be ready. They're going to be ready to play next year. And I think that they would absorb somebody that was a project for the next few years, but the clock's ticking on how many projects you can take. And so I'm interested to see if maybe this is like the last time where they're like, okay, we're going to swing for the fences on somebody. So, and I do think the Thunder are in a place where they can take a risk, and we'll see if they feel the same way on Thursday.
So if they do move up, right, who do you think is a guy or two that they would want to move up, use some of those future picks to move up? Who's a guy or two you think that they could target that you think would be a really good fit for the franchise?
So if we're just talking pure fit, I think Jarris Walker out of Houston is like a pretty clear fit. He's 6'7", he's 250. He can play both the 4 and the 5. He could probably play a little bit of 3 as well, just because he moves well enough. Strong as anybody in the draft, thinks the game really well, good passer, is a questionable scorer and a questionable shooter, which I don't love. It will take some time for him to develop that. He's a willing shooter, but he's not very good. Didn't shoot it well from the free throw line, didn't shoot it well from 3, but he's willing to take those shots. And he's somebody that you could easily see fitting next to Chet. And that if you're wanting somebody to kind of spell Chet a little bit whenever you've got some big bruiser down there, he's somebody that can switch over and guard the big 5s. and you can let Chet kind of roam a little bit. So he's somebody that I think would be good. Asar Thompson, too, played for Overtime Elite. He and his brother are twins, and obviously great athletes. They kind of fit like your prototypical what an NBA player looks like: 6'7", super strong, crazy athletic. Asar's a really good passer. He's a good defender, also kind of a shaky shot. And so that would be another risk there. Another guy I really like is Anthony Black. Anthony Black would be one where day one, the fit isn't quite there. But this is all about upside and somebody that can come in and play the style of basketball the Thunder play. 6'7", point guard that can pass, crazy good defender, super duper smart, just knows how to play the game. And that to me is why I'm kind of drawn to Anthony Black, is that the Thunder are drawn to guys that can really just think the game at a high level. That's why they love Josh Giddey. And so I wonder if they would bring him in. He'd be basically coming off the bench as a point guard or a wing. Also struggles to shoot the basketball. So it's not something I think Thunder fans would be super excited about, but it's definitely like a big upside swing for he and a guy like Asar Thompson. You could think like the Andre Iguodala role that Andre played for the Warriors. Like those guys could do that. Both super smart guys that can kind of fill in the gaps. And then Taylor Hendricks is another one who I think Thunder fans are more excited about. He's 6'9", crazy long arms, really good shot blocker, and can really shoot the basketball, but doesn't think the game at a high level like an Asar Thompson, like a Jarris Walker, like an Anthony Black. And so that's why I kind of question whether the Thunder would want a guy like that. He's more of a play finisher. Think like a modern Serge Ibaka, basically. He's going to hit corner threes. He's going to hit above the break threes. He can finish at the rim. But once he catches the ball, he's not making a lot of decisions with it. And so I wonder if the Thunder would want that kind of guy, because they want to play real rhythmically. They want the ball to flow. They want anybody to grab the ball and push. Like no one's given a position. No one's given like, here's what your assignment is. Like, no, this is how we play. Here's how we're going to play the game of basketball. It's not you have these three assignments. It's the team has this assignment, and this is how we're going to play. And I think Taylor would struggle with that initially, but you park him in the corner, he's going to create space for you. So in the more traditional sense, Taylor Hendricks fits what the Thunder would want to could do, but I just wonder if they want to draft that kind of guy in the lottery.
And I'm guessing, do you classify that list of guys you just ran through as ready to play guys? For the most part, all those guys will be ready to play. A lot of them are pretty young. Like Walker, Hendricks, Anthony Black are all still 19. Asar Thompson's 20, so he's a little bit older. But I think they could contribute on this team. Yeah, they all outside. And Hendricks, if you just give him simple roles, he can play right now. But the rest of those guys, yeah, they would play right away. Like the guys that I think would struggle to play in the NBA right now, like I mentioned him earlier, Bilal Coulibaly, I think is somebody that would really struggle to translate to the NBA from day one. If they wanted to draft like a Keontae George, which I don't think would happen, like I don't think Keontae is quite ready, or Nick Smith Jr. out of Arkansas. Like I just don't think he's ready yet either. He's so skinny and just defensively just doesn't get it. So those guys probably wouldn't be ready. But for the most part, I mean, the Thunder would play almost all these guys. And they played Ousmane Dieng some, and some he didn't get to play a lot because of injury. But they're going to give everybody a chance to play next year. Even if they're like a lot better, I think they're still going to find minutes for whoever they take at 12. But there's going to be guys that are less ready than others for sure.
Looking at if they stay at 12, I can't believe we've gone this long. You are a self-proclaimed Buffkin boy.
That's right.
And you haven't even mentioned Kobe Buffkin.
Hey, some of it, I don't want to jinx it. No, I don't want to jinx it. I want the guy to play here. Yeah, Kobe Buffkin would be awesome. I think he's really the only guy. So with everybody that I've listed so far, it's like, well, they're really good at this and this and this, but they don't have that. Or they can't do this, or they can't shoot, or they can't play make, or they can't do this. He's really one of the only guys in the lottery that I think can do it all. He can handle the ball, pretty good passer, tries hard on defense. He can shoot it. He finished 70% at the rim for a guard that's just insane in college basketball. He's a lefty. There's just a lot to like about Kobe Bufkin. He's somebody that would come in. He wouldn't start for the Thunder. He'd come off the bench, but he can play the 1. He can play the 2. He could probably play some small ball 3. The Thunder aren't going to be afraid to throw him out there with a lot of different lineups. And I think he's ready to contribute. He's a sophomore. He's a really young sophomore, which I think is good for his development. He's still only 19 years old. So I think he could really help. Though the weird thing about Bufkin through this draft cycle is that he's not working out for anybody. He's not giving medicals to anybody. His agent and his parents, whoever it is, are trying to get him somewhere. And I don't exactly know where that is. I think they would like for him to land in a place like Washington, where there's going to be a ton of minutes, where he can be the starting point guard for them from day one. And he's going to put up points and he's going to put up stats. And when you can do that off of a rookie scale deal, cash. The dude's going to make a ton of money, no matter what happens. If he's on a Thunder team where he's coming off the bench and he's scoring 10 points and 2 boards and 1.5 assists, those guys don't make as much money. And so like there's definitely stuff going on behind the scenes with Bufkin. And there's rumors about the Lakers with him. There's rumors that maybe he wants to suppress his value with not working out, so he goes later, but it's not really working because people went back and watched him and they're like, oh, this guy's way better than Keontae George. This guy's way better than Nick Smith. People are figuring that out, and he's going in some places top 10, certainly in the top 14 in a lot of mock drafts. So I think he's probably not going to make it past the Jazz at 16. And if I'm the Thunder, he's a guy that I would just take, because I think he can do a little bit of everything. He could help you from day one. And I look at what Derek White has done for a team like the Celtics. He comes in, he can play a little bit of point guard, he can play off guard, he closes games for you. He can come off the bench, he can start, he can do whatever you need from the guard position. And the Thunder are going to need somebody that just kind of fills those gaps a little bit and can do a little bit more with the basketball than, say, like a Jordan Hawkins. Jordan Hawkins out of UConn, really great shooter. Probably the best like relocation shooter in the draft. The dude is just going to be money. He would be great with the Thunder offensively because the dude just doesn't stop running around screens until he finds an opening, and he bends the defense in a way that not a lot of guys can. But defensively doesn't bring it like Bufkin does. Can't really handle, can't really play make. He's basically Isaiah Joe, like maybe super Isaiah Joe if things really work out. Which, if you're a Thunder fan, you're like, oh yeah, great, yeah, sign me up for that. That would be great. Having more guys that can do that would be helpful. But if I'm the Thunder, I want something a little bit more. I want somebody that can handle a little bit, that can make a decision, and that's where he just kind of checks all these boxes. And so I wonder if he's available at 12. If that's not really the best option when it comes to guy that still has upside, but can do a little bit of everything now, and you're not going to have to wait as long.
All right, we got a lot of the trade talk is ramping up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us like a kind of an overall picture, because it melts the brain to think about it if you're not in it every day. Like, what do the Thunder have asset wise? Like picks that they could trade, package, maybe players, like some of the different things that they could put together if they were to try and move up and capitalize at this moment.
Yeah. So future pick wise, I mean, they have these Clippers and Rockets picks that are going to be the most valuable. So if they're trying to move up in the draft, they have this unprotected Clippers pick for next year. They have this top 4 protected pick from the Rockets next year too, which I think will be pretty valuable. So if they're willing to put something like that on the table, then I think you could move up pretty good. And then also the Clippers, they own the Clippers unprotected swap in 25 and their unprotected pick in 26. That unprotected pick in 26 is pretty enticing because you look at the Clippers roster right now, and it's a bunch of guys that may or may not be in the league in 2026. So you don't know where they're going to be. So that pick in particular is probably one of their most valuable. One that's really interesting is that they own a top 10 protected pick from the Jazz. And there's a lot of circumstances that could lead you to believe that the Jazz would be outside of the top 10 next year, in which the Thunder would get that pick. You could call Utah and say, hey, we'll give you 12 and your pick next year to move up to 9, which I think is a little bit of an overpay, especially in this draft where I think there's kind of flat value from maybe 8 on to like 14. I think you can find somebody that can play. But if the Thunder if somebody's dropping, say Jarris Walker's dropping for some weird reason, and he ends up at 9, I think you can call and make that trade. I think Utah would almost do it immediately because it's not only top 10 protected next year. Let's say the Jazz get the 9th pick again in next year's draft. Well, that moves on. It's top 10 protected in 25 too. And then it's top 8 protected in 26. So that pick is going to be the Thunder's at some point, unless they give it back to them in a deal. So that's something that I think they could do. You also own a couple of these Denver picks that I think are interesting. You also own a top 6 protected Philadelphia 76ers pick in 25. And the 25 draft is supposed to be really good. And so they own a ton of picks that could possibly convey then. So I think those are valuable. And then I would also say, look at Dallas. Dallas is probably the most likely team to move their pick on Thursday, if not before then, because they want to either ease their cap sheet or they want to acquire players that can play now, because they have screwed up everything so badly when it comes to putting a team around Luka Doncic that they have run out of options. And so I think that if the Thunder, again, just like with the 9th pick with the Jazz, I think they just call and say, hey, there's a player we really want at 10. We'll take Davis Bertans' contract. Just take it off your hands. We'll give you 12 and we'll take 10. I think it's an easy way to move up. That one is going to be one that has to be okay with ownership. Who cares about Davis Bertans, honestly, for either team? But he makes $17 million for the next 2 years. And so that's one where you got to call Clay and say, hey, would you pay $17 million to move up 2 spots? The answer might be heck no. Like, figure it out without doing that. But it's something that I think the Mavs would say yes to almost immediately, because they get to keep a lottery pick. They get to ease their cap sheet a little bit. And also, it's kind of funny. I think Davis can kind of play. I think he would play for the Thunder. I think people would like him. He can really shoot the ball. But there's options for the Thunder. They could package, like if they're willing to package a Clippers pick and a Rockets pick and their own pick, they could get somewhere. I don't know player wise who they'd really be willing to give up that anyone would be excited about. You know, like people are throwing Trey Mann into trades all the time. Like, no one cares about Trey Mann. Like, I'm sorry. No one cares about bringing him back in a deal. Like Aaron Wiggins, God bless Aaron Wiggins. I love him. I think he can play. But no other NBA team is sitting around thinking, man, if we could just get our hands on Aaron Wiggins, you know, like that's not happening. Lou Dort is probably the juiciest guy that you could throw into a trade package that could help somebody right now. Like if you called the Mavs and said, we would give you Lou Dort for pick 10, they might say yes. And then you get to have 10 and 12. But if I'm the Thunder, there's just no way I would do that. Lou is so valuable to this team. I think that he's proved that over the course of the last few weeks of the season, where he was just clearly one of their best 5 players. And so I'm not sure that there's a guy like, I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there anybody that's kind of on the back half of the roster that you think anybody else would value? I just don't think it's there. And then like, you're not trading Giddey, you're not trading Jalen Williams, you're not trading Shea, you're not trading Chet. So I think it's about future assets. And then you maybe would throw somebody into a deal, but I don't think that any teams are calling about a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, looking at this draft, obviously Wembanyama's going 1 to San Antonio. What do you think is going to happen after that? Because there's a lot of, it seems like the Brandon Miller camp is getting a little stronger. People may be cooling a little bit on Scoot Henderson. Like, how do you see those top 4 or 5 picks playing out? Because it seems like that order isn't as clear as maybe we once thought it was.
Yeah, I still think Scoot Henderson will go too, whether that's to the Hornets or maybe they trade it to somebody else. I still think that there's a bigger talent gap there than people want to admit. So I still would think Scoot will go too. I think he really impressed in workouts that he's done in the past week or so. And so that you can kind of feel that shifting a little bit. Brandon Miller will likely go 3. And then the draft kind of starts at 4 with Houston. It's like, what in the world is Houston going to do? Do they think James Harden's coming back? Because if he's coming back to Houston, are you really going to draft Amen Thompson and try to develop this big point guard next to James Harden? I think James Harden's coming back to Houston to help develop Amen Thompson? Like, no. So what are we doing there? Are you going to draft somebody that can play with him? Are you going to draft Cam Whitmore, who can go play on the wing, get you buckets? Are you going to draft Jarris Walker, who's just like a defensive specialist right now that can handle a little bit? I don't know what they're going to do. That to me is going to be the most interesting pick. If they're just going talent alone, they're going to go Thompson or they're going to go Cam Whitmore. But I don't know what the Rockets are thinking. And that to me is where the draft kind of starts. This is where I think in some order, Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller. But then who knows? Like Jarris Walker has been talked about from 5 all the way down to 9. Asar Thompson could fall even to the Thunder at 12 on draft night, and I wouldn't be surprised. And he's being mocked at 6 in a lot of these mock drafts. So I think a lot of people like the top 9 guys, but no one really has any clue what the order is going to be. Like Anthony Black could go as high as 5. I'd be surprised if he fell past 9. So there's just a lot of variables there. And then who's going to trade their pick? There's a lot of these teams that want to move up, that want to acquire more assets. I think the Wizards are an interesting one where I think they'll probably stay. But if somebody offers them a ton of future draft capital and a lottery pick, like if the Thunder really wanted to get to 8, we're like, hey, we'll give you 12. We'll give you 4 future first-round picks. Well, they don't have future first-round picks. They're trying to rebuild their team. I think that they have to think long and hard about that. Is that an overpay for the 8th pick? Absolutely. But the Thunder have that kind of stuff to throw around. And so I think that it's going to be a wild lottery. There's not a set in stone order after 3. And it wouldn't surprise me even if the Blazers traded the pick and somebody's like, just loved Amen Thompson. Or like, hey, we believe that guy could be our point guard of the future. You know, we don't like Brandon Miller as much. There's people that have Brandon Miller down on like 5 on their big boards. So we don't know what these NBA teams think. So yeah, I think that the draft order is going to be pretty fascinating to see how it all plays out, because I don't think anybody really has a good pulse on that right now.
Yeah, you don't have to spend much time on this one, but I thought it was interesting, you know, whenever we saw the lottery and San Antonio gets that number 1 spot and Wembanyama, obviously, like, if you follow their fans, which I don't follow, but they happen to show up on social media, it's like, this is it. This is going to save the franchise. Do you see it? Is he that type of player?
Yeah, he's about the most sure thing that we've seen in a long time. He's 7'5", can handle, crazy defensive prospect. He looks like a creative player on 2K where you just took the sliders and you just pushed them all the way up. Like, it doesn't look real. He is going to change San Antonio basketball forever. They've seen stars there. They haven't seen, and like Tim Duncan's awesome, but he wasn't like a spectacle. Like when I was a kid, it was like, man, Dad, can you please get me tickets to see Tim Duncan for my birthday?
I want to see mid-range bank shots, Dad.
Yes. Dad, come on.
The nickname says it all, right?
The post game is insane. The post defense, Dad, come on. No one says that. But I'll tell you, when that dude is traveling the country playing for the Spurs, people are going to pay to see this guy. They're going to pack out the house in San Antonio to watch this guy play basketball, because he's going to grab the ball off the rim. He's going to push. He's going to cross some dude up and just go right to the rim. And everybody's going to look around and be like, what in the world are we watching? Because this is not the sport that I've been watching for the past 20 years. He's that kind of prospect where he could change the game like LeBron did. So yeah, like all the hoopla that's out there is well warranted. And the dude is 7'5". I mean, it's crazy what he can do. Now, there's always injury concerns with guys that are 7'2" and taller. You know, that's just the nature of human bodies. But as long as he can stay healthy, yeah, this dude, he's going to be the Spurs are going to be on national television a lot only because of him.
It's going to be a real shame when Chet wins Rookie of the Year over him.
Oh my gosh.
Real shame.
See,
real shame, Andrew.
Just watch Chet this year, man. He is going to have such a chip on his shoulder about all this Wemby stuff. He hates it. Like, he does not want to hear it. And he's got a chip on his shoulder and he wants to kill him. Now, can he do that? We'll find out. But if the NBA is smart at all, it's Chet versus Wemby on night one on national television. And who in the world is not going to watch that? That's what it should be.
I love where
his progress has been good though, right? Just on Chet, like he was, like some people were hoping there at the very end of the season, like they started showing some of his, you know, shoot around stuff and everything. Like he's on schedule, ready to roll.
Yeah, playing 5-on-5 will. I mean, when we asked Sam about him playing in summer league, you know, a month and change ago, I just thought he was going to be like, no, he's not going to play. He was like, well, we'll see. He might play, which means, yes, he's absolutely going to play some minutes in summer league. So yeah, he looks good. He's playing competitive basketball, has been for a little while. The dude he's been shooting the ball just constantly, just working on his shot. That to me is going to be the biggest deal, is like, can he come in right away and be like a 37 to 40% 3-point shooter? It's possible. And if he does that, it's going to change the way the Thunder play immediately. He was already going to change the way they play defense. But then when you add in a guy that can be a real pick and pop threat, a guy that can play out of the short roll as well, man, I think people are also, like I talked about Gabe, I think people are cautious about talking about Chet, which is fine. But the dude wants to be the best. He wants to be the best player on this team. He wants to be one of the best players in the NBA. Like he's driven that way. So I think he's going to surprise some people next year.
I'm with you. Dude, you guys have been killing it over at Down to Dunk. And I would assume now this goes into the #1 spot over the Low Post when it comes to best podcasts you've appeared on this year.
100%. This is it. This is
Dude,
it.
That
right
was
here.
Big time. I was fired up for you. When I saw your name, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, I still can't believe that happened. That was so much fun.
Anyone not familiar, Andrew is on one of the most popular NBA podcasts. And it was, I felt like I won in a weird way that you were on it, if that makes sense. I was like, yes, let's go.
I feel like I put that out into the universe because I was driving home with my family. I think we were coming home from church, and I was like, the Thunder were playing really well at the time. I was talking to her. This was a few days before Zach had asked me to come on, and I said, I think Zach Lowe's going to do a Thunder segment soon, and I want to be the person on his podcast so badly. Like, I hope that it's me. I want it to be me so bad. I'll be so disappointed if he asks somebody else. And then it was just like a couple days later that he's like, text me. I was like, we did it.
We've done it. We've arrived, baby. Andrew, you're the man. Have a ton of fun this week. I know draft week is very, very busy for you. So appreciate the time, man, and happy Father's Day.
Yeah. Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it.